Happy 11/11. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. It's so great that you're here, and I am so grateful that you're here. Welcome back, everyone, to my subscribers and my regular viewing audience. Thank you so much for being here and participating and being part of this journey. And if you're new here, regardless of what platform you're finding yourself on, we're on YouTube, BitChute, and Odysee. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate your presence. And as always, whenever you interact with this content, it actually does support the work from independent content creators like myself. When you subscribe, you hit that like button, when you share and comment, it all actually gives data to the algorithm in which determines if this is recommended to people, putting into their recommended feed, or just being suggested to a wider audience. So thank you very much. It is 11/11. So wow, so much to talk about today. Whoa. First of all, how is everyone feeling since yesterday coming into today? It's been it's a range of emotion, I feel like, in a lot of ways. I'm just burning this Palo Santo here. That's why I'm looking down, so I don't burn myself while I'm doing it. So, all right, guys. How is everyone feeling? It's feels like it's been a range of emotion. And even today when I woke up and started preparing for this transmission and just preparing for my day in general, it felt so uplifted, but also really intense, right? At one point, I was just so moved emotionally. I just started getting very emotional and tearful and with joy, right? Not necessarily of sadness right this moment. We are at a threshold, and we talked about yesterday how the 11/11 gateway comes around every year. It's not a new thing, but what's going on in the larger context really has a lot to do with the feeling of it and the amplitude of all of the energy surrounding it. And we are seriously about to cross a threshold, a major threshold. And it's important that we are intact in terms of what's important to us and our connection to our higher self. And that message has been coming through a lot, especially since last week, but even in the days leading up to this. So today we have our first quarter square of the sun in Scorpio, the Aquarian moon. That means the moon will be in Aquarius all day. We'll move into Pisces tomorrow. Tomorrow is an important and very impactful day as well. The sun will be in a trine to Neptune, and this is the first of a number of trines to Neptune at this very particular point before Neptune stations direct on December 1st. And this is a really beautiful and it's, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, right? Let's just say when we go into the astrology, we'll spend a lot more time in this realm, but suffice it to say, people are going to start standing in their power, and it will provide a very strong base with our true surrender and trust, with our connection to divine source, to God, to the universe, to the plan, however you identify it for yourself, because it's this really very innocent and open and almost childlike trust in what is coming, the newness of what is coming, that is really going to form the base and the foundation for our ability to find our voice, to find our expression, and ultimately to find our action when Mars comes around to this point and is in a trine to Neptune, where people are really going to stand up for themselves and they're going to say no. So it's important that we are prepared as we walk through the threshold. Make sure that all of our ducks in a row, that everything is stacked properly. Venus is going to be a big part of that today, and we'll go over all of the astrology. It will provide, I think, a very strong connection to making sure that who and what we value, what has meaning to us and value within our lives, is in fact truly taken care of. And this patience has been coming up over and over again, right? That we do need to exercise a certain amount of patience as we move through this time and not jump the gun, so to speak, because as we saw with yesterday's intuitive reading and the intuitive portion of this the transmission from yesterday, it's if we rush into things with some foolishness and not in a very direct connection to our innate, to our 0 point, to that beginner's mind that the Fool ultimately represents, the connection of the beginning of the end. If we move into this adjustment period that was very strongly represented yesterday, not only with the astrology, but with just the energetics in general, then we really stand to kind of jumping the gun, shooting ourselves in the foot. I don't know why this imagery is making its way up. I think it's because the trines to Neptune from all of the Scorpio energy that's going to start tomorrow with the sun is very much related to the symbol and the archetype of the soldier, right? And so there is a strong connection to defying the orders of an authoritarian regime and staying in alignment with our own consciousness and our conscience. This is a big thing that's going to happen. So it is going to get weird. It's going to get intense. We're going to move into completely unknown territory, I think, moving forward from today. And the full moon lunar eclipse that is going to happen next Friday is going to be a very challenging moment, I think, for all of us. And this is why we have to be fully aware and awake in some ways and patient as we cross this threshold. Again, making sure that everything is in alignment with our material world, right? Our relationships, our bodies, our health, our resources, all of those things we want to make sure are actually stacked up properly, and everything is where it needs to be. And the patience that comes along with that is very necessary. So, there's just so much happening right now. So the first thing I want to do is show you these incredible connections that I found this morning just in my own research that I do every day, right? We're going to look at how incredibly correlated and connected the astro transits were from yesterday to the Schumann Resonance and some very intense seismic activity. So when we get into the intuitive portion of the transmission, you'll see that there is something to be said for, again, connecting into the grid of the planet, connecting into the heartbeat of the planet, because that is what creates the Schumann resonance. The heartbeat of the planet is what creates the electromagnetic field that then ultimately protects us, just like we do, right? Our heart is an electrical pump, and it creates a field around us when it is working. So that's there's something to be said for this connection that I have stressed over and over again. So Starseed, it is time to walk through a gateway that we have walked through before. It is a very familiar resonance because this is the Atlantean review all over again, right? We're having a fold in time and space right now to take us right back to that same type of experience, and we've all been there. If you are identified as a starseed, guaranteed that this is why you're here, because you're directly connected to that experience. And never again, right? Hashtag never again. And so this is what we're here to do. So we're about to walk through this threshold, and yes, it's going to be unknown. Yes, it's going to be weird. Yes, it's going to test our resolve and our connection to our conscience. And specifically too, we will need to really connect into the lunar transits right now to feel our way through territory that may not be very obvious to us, or completely new in this incarnation. So that's very important to recognize. And we do have a first quarter square of our moon and sun, right? A fixed square. So we'll go over all of this with the astrology when we get to it, because there's so much to share today. And I want to make sure that I get to it all in a very timely manner. So I'm checking in with the chat. Feeling renewed now, says Barbara Hill. Absolutely. I'm definitely feeling it. It was a little bit rough in the sleep realm last night, but I feel rested. It's like it's so active. But at the same time, I'm not feeling tired or drained or like I'm doing battle. It's just very active. And of course, the solar weather from a week ago really got us calibrated to be able to walk through this threshold with some power and some boundaries attached as well, or intact, I should say. I've been restless, feeling literally every feeling that exists, but when it's expected, it's not so bad. Yes, this is exactly what astrology is the most useful for, I think, is that you can't necessarily... You can intellectualize all day about these experiences. You can anticipate them. You can even see the future if that's something that you're able to do, but it never takes the place of the lived experience. And that is the essence of what we're here to really do, is to immerse ourselves in the experience. So there's lots of things that you can relate to in terms of that dynamic, right? Of you can intellectualize it all day, but once it's here, it's the experience, and you have to live through that, make decisions based on that, and move forward from there. Funny, I had a weird sleep too, yet feel rested. Who knows? I think that really what it is that we are energetically upgraded, and this happened with the solar weather last week and the activity of the sun. It really did recalibrate us in a very distinct way to get us to this point, and many layers at once. Oh, I definitely am feeling that. Many layers at once. And this is with that fold of space-time. That makes a lot of sense to me too. I'm definitely feeling that. So I want to show you some things that just blew my mind, although I'm not surprised at all about it, but still blew my mind because it was so on point. Okay, guys, so let's move into some pictures here. First, we're going to look at our good friend, the Schumann Resonance. So it had been pretty mellow, as you can see, right? You can see that it's been pretty mellow for the most part, up until yesterday into this morning. So let's look at this. I want to make sure that it's in the right space. Okay, so as we see, this is the crossover. Actually, if you look at this 1700 or even 15, let's start here, because this is important to consider these actual time frames, because when we look at the seismic activity, it's going to, and the astrology, they're all this trifecta of incredible power that happened yesterday into this morning. So 1500 UTC, this is universal time. So that's about 5 hours ahead of the Eastern Standard Time in the United States. So if we look at 1500, that's about 3 p.m. UTC. So that is about 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so moving forward from there. And you see that there is a significant amplification that starts around 1500 UTC and then kind of drops off and then goes even higher and peaks at about 37 hertz. And so, or decibels or whatever. I don't even know at this point what the amplitude itself is measured in, but it stays at a pretty steady 7 to 8, so I'm guessing it's the hertz, right? So there was a large blast, right? About 1900 UTC, so that's 7 p.m. So that would be about 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Major amplification yesterday, and I think that many of us definitely felt it. So, and then I want to keep showing you this graph here so that we can get a full picture of what we're looking at before we start looking at the astrology and the seismic activity. So then we see the quality, right? Here's our quality, right? The quality of the tone. And there's a significant leap in the red line just about the time that we got the first amplification, right? Roughly about 1500 UTC. So we're seeing that too, that there was not only a blast, an increase in the amplitude. We see the quality of this red line, which I'm still trying to figure out what each of these really represents. But in the meantime, we can still just look at what is this is a massive jump too in the quality. These are remaining fairly steady, you know, in like a heartbeat pattern, right? In a heartbeat pattern, it's pretty consistent. And then right after the amplitude went very high, which was 1900, you see a huge jump in the quality, massive, up to about 50 hertz, okay? And this is happening in that crossover period between the 10th and the 11th of universal time. So right in that window of turning over at that time into 1111, there's a massive leap in the quality, as you can see. And there was a massive leap in the quality earlier when the amplitude was starting to go up. Now, when we go down a little bit, now this is the biggest significant thing here. You see at the same time that the quality jumped, the frequency itself, right? So we talked about this before, the pitch of it, that's huge. 8.8, it's never been this high. That's pretty significant change in pitch at the same time that the quality has increased. Now, if we just go back real quick here, we see that the amplitude starts to come down at that point, but the quality and the pitch, or the frequency itself, right? The actual wavelength and oscillation jumps up to 8.8 hertz. That's very significant. It's huge. It's not, I don't know if it's ever been that high before. So we also see this massive increase in the frequency at the changeover to 1111, at least at universal time. So, of course, time is all relative. It's an illusion, but we do see that there is something that is correlating here. So when we're going to move over here to our earthquake map, because this is now, so we've looked at the first prong here of this trifecta, maybe the baseline, maybe one of the sides of the triangle. It's hard to say because it's all equal, but we're going to look at our map here. So what we see is the ring of fire is just literally on fire, right? It's not that volcanoes are erupting necessarily. It's just very, very active. I want to make sure you can see this. Yep. So these two are very big, and we're going to look at them because this is Japan, 6.6. Let me see if you can see. I'll move this over. There we go. Because we're just looking at the Pacific Ring of Fire anyway right now. 6.6 in Japan. So it's in the water. It's not land, but it's pretty darn close for a 6.6 earthquake that there was probably some tsunami warning, and it was probably felt somewhere, I would imagine. I haven't gotten into the news necessarily yet, but we have this. Then we have another one, a 6-pointer. So here's that one. I'll show it to you. It'll light it up. There it is. And then we have another one, another 6-pointer in Indonesia, right? So right after that is another very large earthquake. And then this one that I really find just the name of it, Ascension Island, okay? This was over here on this fault line that's very close actually to La Palma. So La Palma, the earthquake over in the Canary Islands, is kind of in this general area. So we see this, and it's not a very large one, 4.9, but when we see the correlation to the time, it's going to possibly, bring some awareness to this. So number one, we're going to look at 6.6. Okay, this is the one in Japan. Okay, now I just want you to look at this. 1545 UTC. So let's go back. 1545 UTC. Where are we here? Okay, guys. Well, that's interesting. This looks like about the time that the amplitude started to increase, right after 1500. So there was this large earthquake, and then all of a sudden the amplitude of the Schumann resonance, right? The field, the electromagnetic field that is emitted as a result of the heartbeat of the planet gets very loud. I wonder what that's all about. Maybe that the heartbeat of the planet started to move faster, and as we're going to see, that is exactly what ended up happening. So this earthquake happens, and then the amplitude starts to go up. All right, that's the first piece. We'll exit out of here. Next, here's the one in Indonesia that happened right after, 1746. Can you see it? Yep, 1746 UTC. Let's go back to the Schumann. Okay, between 17 and 19, you can see another spike in the amplitude, right? With another massive earthquake, okay? And then the Ascension Island, okay? We'll look at that one. This is at midnight, 11:11, north of Ascension Island. This is where we see this earthquake. Not very large, but then, and it's not very large. So you see that it's kind of in this area. There's a little bit of a blip, but what do we see at that time? Massive spike, massive, right on time. Massive spike in the quality and the largest spike in the frequency of the Schumann that I think is ever really, like the actual frequency that has been recorded. I have to go back and really pour through some of these graphs to see if that's true, but according to this website that is publishing it, that's also what they're saying, is that it's the largest spike, the highest frequency recorded in terms of the actual frequency itself. So we have this, I'm going to see if I can see it on the map. Let's see here. Yes. So in the Atlantic Ocean. So La Palma's kind of over here in this area. So this is much more further south, kind of like in this general area here. But that was north of Ascension Island. Look at that. All right. So I just thought that these were really interesting to connect to. Now, in terms of the seismic activity and the correlation down to like the hour of the Schumann resonance and these massive, especially the frequency changing, okay? So some dots, right? Some dots to put together. Now, this is also going to blow your mind because it blew my mind. So we're looking at yesterday's astrology, right? We talked about yesterday's astrology already, so we don't have to go into it, but let's look at some timing here. So if we go back to say, I don't know, let's look at this again. We're looking at, let's look at 715 to 1700, or even 1900 UTC. So what would that be? That would be 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 10th. Let's just go back to that and see what was happening. Oh, that's interesting. Now let's go back just a little bit, right? And we look at what was happening at, oh, that's 10. Right? Remember this? Remember this square right here, exact at around 11 a.m. And when, so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 p.m. Oh, right in here. Oh, that's interesting. Right in here, we see that square happening right in this region here where Mercury and Mars were in a square to Saturn and Aquarius. So we won't go into all of that because we talked a great deal about that yesterday and in previous videos. But look at that. As soon as it's exact, we see that the amplitude is starting to go up. We also saw that there was that big earthquake, huge earthquake in Japan at the very same time as that square. That is just fascinating. And then we go and we see what is next. Well, let's look at where that Schumann resonance spiked, the frequency itself spiked, right? 23 to 24. So the changeover at 11:11 UTC, which would be roughly 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So let's go to there and see what happened, because you're going to see that it actually was a very significant connection to Uranus in Taurus. Didn't we talk about that? There it is right here, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 degrees Aquarius to 12 degrees Taurus. We talked about that yesterday too. And Uranus in Taurus is highly connected to seismic activity, because you're talking about rapid shifts in physical material reality. And the moon in Aquarius, that is drew our attention to the difference between the projection of ideals onto people and also the reality of the situation and the reality of being a human being and what that means. So we talked a lot about that, but you'll see that it had an actual correlation to this spike in the frequency, huge spike in the frequency. So if that wasn't some sort of how could it not be? How could it not be some sort of interaction here between the cosmos, the energy, and the frequency of all of these cosmological bodies that are interacting with each other? And then you see these massive changes in the field of the planet herself at this very same time. So this really opened the gateway at the same time that this opened the gateway, right? This square between the moon and Uranus at that very same time. It was like it blasted it open, because we've talked about this many times, right? That it's this position of Uranus in Taurus right now is really challenging us to drop the baggage of what we can't take us through our ascension process, however you identify that for yourself, the awakening process, the ascension process, going through the Stargate into the evolution of the human consciousness. We're being challenged to drop what we can't take with us, and it's a natural thing to want to accumulate and to have comfort and to acquire resources based on our ambition on an ego level, but we can't take that with us through the Stargate. And part of that was the realization that there is a difference between the projection onto others, or the projection onto us from others about what is ideal, and the reality of the situation. We have to be real with ourselves. And as much as that was an uncomfortable connection in that square, we also talked about how it was almost a mutual reception, that they had something for the other to give in that moment, in terms of being very familiar with each other's territory. So there was an exchange there as well, even though it was like, these two bodies or these two energies colliding with each other, and they collided so significantly hard that they not only opened something, but there was a transfer. There was like an exchange of energy in this moment, and it just blasted open this portal or this gateway, this 1111 gateway. Pretty significant. And I'm curious to see how the day ended for people, and if there was anything in particular that came up or came into your awareness, depending on where you were and what was going on and what part of the chart you may find these things in. I'm just curious to see, but what we are looking at is definitive connections between the astrological transits and the Schumann resonance being recorded. And then, of course, all of the seismic activity that's showing actual shifting of the planet in real time. Just mind-blowing. It's so, it's just so much. And I'm really my mind's kind of blown. So let's see if there's anything else. I don't think there's really anything else to share along that line right now. So I want to get into the actual transmission itself. So I'm going to bring up the reading, and there's a lot of fire here, but there's also a sense that we have completed a turn here, and that we are about to embark on, yes, some very challenging situations, maybe situations that seem like we're not strong enough. And it's coming from a place where we've done the splitting apart. It's happened already, right? And now there is a sense of completion as a result of that. So I want to take a moment here for all of us to ground ourselves to be ready to receive this part of the transmission. So remember, deep diaphragmatic breathing. One thing that came up that I want to share about that, if you don't already know, so the diaphragm is a muscle. We do know that. When you contract the muscle, it fans out and pulls down. So it pulls your lungs open, changes the volume of your lungs, and that changes the pressure inside your body, and then is able to inflate your lungs. This is just it's interesting that we had the moon yesterday at that in that square, in that square also too, in that square, I got those confused. Those Sabian symbols, I got confused in my mind. That square to Uranus was the Sabian symbol for the moon in Aquarius is the barometer. So the barometer measures the change in pressure, right? And so there was a change in pressure, right? There was a change in a lot of things in terms of the energetics. So, but there's also that change in pressure is what fills your lungs because of what your diaphragm does. Also, too, keep in mind that your lymph system, right? This is a big part of our immune system is the lymph, right? It is taking that which the immune system and the cells will attack and destroy. This is how we get rid of it, is through the lymph system. It has no pump like the cardiovascular system does with the heart. So it relies on muscle contraction in order to move the lymph through. Well, the diaphragm is a huge muscle, and we have tons of lymph nodes in our groin area, in that sacral area, right? This immunity that's in our gut there's so many different layers to it. And one of them is the fact that we have tons of lymph nodes in that area as well. So when we do deep diaphragmatic breathing and contracting the diaphragm, it's also pushing the lymph into its final place of the lymph nodes to process that which needs to be expelled from our body in terms of toxins and unwanted pathogens and all the things that the immune system naturally takes care of. So when we do deep breathing, it's not just about being calm. Yes, that's very much part of it, but it actually serves physiological functions, and one of them being immunity, right? And so this is, again, really important that we actually practice deep diaphragmatic breathing for many reasons. So with that in mind, I'm going to invite everybody right now to every time take a deep diaphragmatic breath. So we're going to contract the diaphragm where it pulls and fans out and draws our lungs down. So ready? Deep breath in. And release. Excellent. Well done, everyone. I just have to say congratulations to all of us, because we can really feel, especially starseeds, because this is kind of what we're here to do. We're ready to walk through this threshold, right? I think that we've taken to heart the messages that have come through about being patient and making sure that the real life things are attended to before we move forward, and trusting that that is a safeguard for us as we move through. The thumbnail image for this transmission is if you're familiar with the Never-Ending Story, right? That is the Sphinx gate. Oh, and to see that the Sphinx coming up in this reading too is a really incredible connection here. Okay, here we go. So we have the Art of Alchemy, right? This is number 14. This is in the more traditional tarot called Temperance, right? It is the idea of balance, but it's specifically the balance of opposing elements in a way that when they are able to come together into a synthesis, we create something new. This is alchemy at its most base level here. And so when you look at this card, you see the two faces, the two hands, the two beasts, right, that are seemingly different, representing different elements. They're both adding to the cauldron as well as the alchemist themselves, adding to the cauldron the fire and the water, creating the steam. And if you know anything about like turbines and electricity and stuff, it's steam that like moves the turbines to create power. So there's something very powerful about this, and it's more so than just creating steam. This is just a really easy way to wrap your mind around the connection of fire and water and what it creates, something that can actually, power, create power, create electricity. But more than that, we are synthesizing something completely new, something, a unique creation. But it requires that we have the pure elements on either side and dissolve them down so that they can then reform into a completely new substance. So when we have the Art of Alchemy reversed, oh, and by the way, this is the Sagittarian card, right? Sagittarius is the alchemist, right? This Sagittarius is the sign in which we synthesize. We come to our dissertation, right? We take everything that we have collected, we've analyzed it, we've crunched the numbers, and analyzing it means we purify it, right? That's a very Virgo type of experience, is the purification that goes along with, because with Gemini, it's just raw data. It's not until we get to Virgo that it becomes purified and reconstituted. And when we say analysis, if you have any background in actual like research, then you know that is where you purify the data. You put it through its analytical process. And that has a lot of different expressions in terms of our journey and how, all of our activities, it's however you are experiencing that sixth house energy, it follows a lot of different pathways. But the general idea here is that purifying the elements down to its most base constituent parts and reconstituting it so that when it's time for the alchemical process, they are already purified elements. Now, again, when it's reversed, our causal factor coming into the moment is the opposite, the fission, right? We've already gone through the splitting apart and the tearing apart, going into opposition. And nuclear fission releases energy just as much as nuclear fusion releases energy. Nuclear fission is the atomic bomb, right? You're splitting an atom, right? You're splitting the base constituent part of matter, which is the atom, right? Splitting it, and it releases energy. Not even splitting the bonds that hold together molecules or minerals, but the atom itself. So when we think about this in terms of society, for instance, I mean, we have been split apart, right? There's been a split apart between ourselves, between other people, between us and society, especially because there is a controlled demolition of what is and what will be, in order to make room for what's coming. And what that is has a lot to do with what we do on in terms of our own spiritual and energetic journey, right? Because the timeline, it all roads, I hate to use this term, but I really hate that they've that it's getting utilized for this, but also think about it in terms of like, follow the money, right? All roads lead to Rome. Like the timeline, all aspects of the timeline are leading to the singularity, right? To the event horizon. This has been the case for a long time. And so the splitting apart has been a necessary part of the experience, right? The bifurcation that people talk about, the Gemini North Node, right? Where we have had to split ourselves apart, but it hasn't been in a way that we could be separated. It has released a lot of energy when we've gone through this process. And it's, again, between ourselves and our old identity, right? There's Chiron involved here. Between ourselves and people that we've been close to, family members, maybe our own identity politically and socially and spiritually, so many different things. And as a society in general, there's been a massive splitting apart as well, but it's released energy. And now that we have done so, there's a completion moment here. Like there is something that has come full circle in a very material way. Venus in Aries, in the third decan of Aries, by the way, which is the territory of that October full moon, right? The last 10 degrees of Aries, 20 to 30 degrees. This something has completed. It's not a full completion. It's a momentary completion. It's a momentary experience of security in terms of what we have already created for ourselves. So there is a sense that something work has been done, and the plan is successful. Now keep Venus, put a pin in that, because when we come to the astrology, this card is going to make more sense with where Venus is. The plan has been successful, whatever that plan is for ourselves, right? The fire has settled and reigns over its realm. So there's been this splitting apart and this fission, right? And this incredible release of energy from splitting and tearing apart. But now we find a settling in this, and specifically in terms of creation, transformation, the fire of our spiritual nature. All of these things the fire is so connected to the spiritual nature of us, right? The fire in our soul. It is settled. And oftentimes when you get this card, there is something that has completed that's usually seen as a failure, or at least on the surface as a failure. But we've learned a lesson. And the failure was exactly what we needed to achieve some measure of spiritual maturity, right? So something has this fission and this splitting apart, as incredibly powerful and destructive as it's been. It is now at this moment where we have really achieved something, some sort of spiritual maturity that's going to allow us to walk through this gateway or this threshold. And the Sphinx gate in the Never-Ending Story, remember that you can only walk through if your heart is like pure and courageous. Otherwise, it just, blows you to bits. So we've learned something here, and the fire has settled. There's a moment of completion here as a result of that splitting. It kind of helps us identify and why it happened in the first place, and to really gather the energy from that situation and realize that there was something to it. It wasn't all in vain, right? We've learned so much in the last 2 years. It's pretty remarkable. So this is the heart of the matter, right? This is the axis point between our horizon of consciousness, or the cause and effect relationship that we experience, and our energetic polarity. So at the heart of it here is this sense of completion with Venus in Aries in particular. Now, when we're going to move into our energetic polarity here. So Uriel and the Sphinx, speaking of fire, right? Uriel is the fire of God. Uriel is the archangel. Not mentioned very often, but is mentioned more in the Book of Enoch, if you're familiar with that. So Uriel is the fire of God. So Uriel is kind of the agent of destruction in terms of, the highest order of plan. And so the Sphinx is the silent holder of truth. And look at that full moon back there. Oh boy. So the idea here, and of Edgar Cayce in particular, whose work I'm really enjoying a lot more lately, because he was I really just appreciate so much of the juxtaposition, because he was a very devout Christian individual, and for him to channel and do these readings was that juxtaposition of that faith that he had and his particular religious connection, and then the channeling of something very deep and timeless. So one of the things he talked, and I've talked about this many times, many of you probably already know this, that he talked about that the Akashic records are under the Sphinx, under the paw of the Sphinx. Now, whether that's literal or figurative, it really doesn't matter. The point is, there's something underneath here that represents where we've come from in a way that we don't have access to right now, and it has been kept from us and literally buried. Okay, so when we talk about Uriel and the Sphinx in terms of this, this is the Akashic Tarot, and we look at the number, right? 2 + 1, it's 3. There is a sense of completion again, and a sense of that trifecta again, right? A very balanced equal form. but we also are talking about the capacity to dig in a way that we've never done before, digging an inner discovery of our deepest self. And with all of this Scorpio energy involved, it is very well placed. So it requires that we chip away at the substances that have solidified into what we think is reality, right? Into material reality of our old belief systems, our histories, right? That's a big part of it too. What have we been taught? What have we been told? What do we accept as reality that is actually able to be chipped away with the right motivation, with the right assistance? And this is where Uriel comes in, because Uriel is the fire of God, giving us the motivation, giving us the momentum and the action to do this work, because it's very difficult work. We're digging in and discovering the deepest part of ourselves individually and as a society and as a collective. And there's information that we need to access in this realm, I think. And this is where we're really drawing a lot of our power from right now, or at least have the potential to do so, is what is happening under the surface is this really deep digging and inner discovery that we can call upon Uriel as an archetype or as a guide in this moment to assist us. And again, here is the fission of the splitting apart, releasing just as much energy as the fusion of these things, being the fire that can really pull away and chip away at these very solidified old beliefs and histories to find something way, way deeper and something that's much more hidden about our ancestry, right? And again, we're going back to Atlantis, right? Because we know that there is a direct connection between the Atlantean priesthood and coming into, ancient Egypt, Sumer, even over in South America and the Americas in general with the Maya and the Inca, in terms of, this dissemination of this history and this particular civilization that was no more at that point, but still found its foothold in the new cycle. So Uriel as the fire of God, able to, we can use this fission, we can use this power, and even though we identify at the heart of us that there is a completion, we can utilize that in terms of digging very deeply. This is part of the threshold we're crossing, and this is very much part of where the sun and the moon are in a square today, because we are in fact about to cross the threshold. We're about to walk across that Sphinx gate, or walk through that Sphinx gate, and we really need to be very brave and courageous. And digging like this takes some bravery and some courage. And Uriel can at least give us the fire of God, right? The fire that ignites our soul to get into these places that maybe we would not otherwise feel that we could go into. So as our attention is, as we look at where our attention is, where this energy can be released, the Eight of Forces, here's our lightning bolt, right? Here's Uranus all day long, and it's reversed as well. So again, there's an 8, right? So we have this divine intervention type of energy, the double of the 4, and which is the 4 of Wands, and then you have the 8 of Forces, but it's also reversed, right? So there's kind of like this, these two are kind of, head to head, right? And when this card is reversed, and we've had it many times, we may have suffered a loss. It's the idea that the storm is already dispersing, that the bolt of lightning has already happened, and it's time now to set down new roots, seek new ground, and accept that this is an exceptional time, a very exceptional time, a very dynamic force. And this is nothing short of divine power moving through us and rising up, okay? Rising up. So what we dig down and discover gets pulled up and released through our conscious awareness, through our intention, through our voice, through our expression, okay? All of these things. And so we're bringing this power up. Again, so important to realize what the planetary grid is up to and our connection to it, because this is our connection to ourselves and where we're going, right? The earth is sentient. She is ascending too, and she's taking us with her if we are able to hold the same resonance. And we're going to have to do some work here. But we're being primed in so many ways. It's pretty remarkable, because where we are going here is a fight. Absolutely. A fight, a struggle to survive despite the burning down, ability to go down deep and pull that up in this moment here of a momentary completion, right? A circle coming to a conclusion for just a moment, and releasing it into a new position, a new place, right? Making space for something new to, for us, and making space within ourselves to be able to hold what we're about to walk into. So, but we are going to face up to forces that seem stronger than us, and they probably are. And these situations can sometimes at first seem very hopeless, right? But the potential here for this is initiation and rebirth. I mean, you see Mars in Leo, right? There is so much backing, but there are a lot of notches out of this crooked wand here. It looks pretty rough. We're going to take a beating in some ways, right? We're going to experience a struggle, but it's the valor is something to pay attention to. We actually have the will and the capacity and the energy to actually face this, okay? But it's not going to be easy. And they're pulling out all the stops now. They're not, even though we can say that, nothing can stop what is coming, like the ascension and awakening of humanity, the evolution of global consciousness and what that means is on track, and it's happening. Our experience of it along the way is what is variable, as we've talked about many times. And now what we're seeing is that it's really on track. And as we walk through this gateway, through this threshold, we have to accept on some level that there's going to be more of a struggle, right? And there's no getting around that, right? That's part of it. If you are going to threaten the power structure that has been in place for thousands of years and only is interested in power and control, this is what we're going to face, right? But we have everything that we need. And if we actually tap into it and walk through this threshold with a manner of, with courage and a pure heart, right? And honesty and integrity, all of those things as well. So there's one thing I do want to share with you. And first of all, let's look at the guidance that's surrounding all of this. Here, this keeps coming up too. The One of Roses, the commitment, the contract, right? We've been talking about Juno here at the Galactic Center and how she represents a closed system of balance, very much like the Libra scales, very, very much like the Libra scales, and how that closed system can sometimes backfire on us if we are a closed system, right? And if we are very unhappy with the lack of balance, revenge can really come out. And that old Klingon saying, right, that revenge is a dish best served cold. And when it's hot, then we make mistakes and we possibly, work against our nature or certainly work against our goals as well. And I'm not advocating for revenge at all, you know what I mean? This is just there's a reason for that. And revenge is a dish best served cold is really a connection or a reference to a very detached and uncompromising honesty that will in fact bring about a distinct adjustment, which we saw yesterday. So, but this again is reversed. And so in terms of guidance, to not forget our commitment to ourselves. We have to, if we are struggling to get down into the depths of who we are, to really do this work, this inner work, and to walk through the Sphinx gate, we have to make sure that we are committed to this process in our hearts, in our souls. And this card does represent, again, a separation, a break, an investment that fails, an emotional component that underlies this entire experience of loss, and reminds us to make ourselves and our higher self the priority. And if we've forgotten that, then it's going to be very difficult to really do this digging, this intense digging that we are being asked to really do, because it's through the digging and the plunging ahead into the unknown of the Scorpionic realm that is going to really bring that power up. We have to be able to go down in order to bring it back up to the surface. So this is really suggesting here, again, many times this week, this card has come out over and over and over, different positions, that there will be things that fit. And remember that, of the Four of Wands here, that it often is a seeming failure that is what actually brings us to a state of completion and a growth point. And so we do have to contend with this, that there is something here that is breaking or has failed, or we have this emotional attachment to the experience of the loss that we have to be very mindful about, so that we don't find ourselves getting pulled into that experience as we are attempting to dig deeper than we've ever dug before as we walk through this threshold. Now, the grouse is about connecting to the rhythm, the first rhythm. What was that? That was the heartbeat of our mother. Was the first rhythm we really encountered as a physical being in form, a spiritual being in form. As we were being, as we were growing before we were even born, the first rhythm is the rhythm of the mother. And so connecting to the rhythm of the mother as the planet is very much part of this as well, as we talked about already with all the seismic activity, with the Schumann resonance. The rhythm is the chord where the material and the spirit coincide. So the heartbeat of the planet, as we talked about, creates the Schumann resonance. So when we connect into the rhythm of the planet, of our mother, right? Our planetary mother that we are all connected to, and who has no judgment and wants all of us to succeed, because that's how a mother is, right? Wants us to succeed, wants us to go with her, wants us to be happy and healthy and productive and all the wonderful things, to live in harmony with her, right? We have to connect into her rhythm, and the grouse really represents this as part of it. And so again, if we are experiencing the emotional turmoil of where we've been separated, maybe we need to reconnect ourselves first to the mother, the mother as the planet, in order to reestablish ourselves, so we can go back into these really deep connections. And maybe that's where we establish it, is going down deep and really chipping away at old belief structures, so that we can actually have a very direct emotional and energetic connection to the planet, because that's really the only way, in my opinion, in my estimation. It's really how we get through this event horizon and pop out the other side in our ascended form, is not by leaving, it's by connecting to the planet. So speaking of connections, right? The meerkat. So this is the guidance in terms of the lightning bolt, right? The storm is already dispersing. We've already experienced the loss, the separation. It's time to start putting some new roots down, to seek new ground. Get support from a trusted group if you're really struggling with this process. I think that, again, because if we feel it, we definitely feel it. And many of us have been feeling it in different ways. And now it's kind of culminating. Find the people in your life that get it the same way you do, and be willing to, and also be willing to be that support for other people as well. Everybody's going through this in different ways and different experiences. We've already experienced the separation, and it has led us to a place where we've learned something. Now it's time to come back together. Now it's time to unify. Now it's time to see each other as brothers and sisters in humanity, and not be artificially divided, which is such an old, stale tactic. It's like, can we finally move past this already? And it's difficult, right? It's difficult when people seem to represent or stand for things that are abhorrent to us, okay? But we also know that there's probably more of us that deep down know that what's happening is not okay, and we need to connect to each other. So if you're struggling, get support. And if you are in a position to be supportive, this is a good time to do it. Because again, the Akashic Library speaking, I mean, there's a lot of this energy here about going down, right? Going down and discovering, going down into the Akash, right? That's the morphogenetic field that surrounds everything, that is connecting everything through time and space, that is beyond that. It's also important that we get a better understanding of old motives, new purposes. Here's Chiron, came right back again, right? This is where Chiron is right now, Chiron Retrograde. So this is all this internalized type of experience about how we've identified ourselves in the past, and coming to a new symbolic representation of that without getting triggered into reverting back to that identity, right? That we somehow will not exist if we let go of that particular identity, because it's not true, right? So a better understanding of old motives and new purposes is something that we can, we can take some time to go into our own Akash, go into the Akashic Library, however you visualize that for yourself, to get an idea of where you've come from, where we're going, and connect with people who are going in the same place, right? It's time now, right? We've done a lot of work in the last 18 months with the nodes in Gemini and Sagittarius to really get a handle on what it means to live in this bifurcated experience, and take the full advantage of it, right? To collect the data, to span the dialectic rather than to get pulled into the division itself. And part of that is we've had to go through the bifurcation. We've had to go through the division in some ways so we can come to this awareness. And soon, when the nodes in February shift in, January, February, March are now shifting into the Taurus, Scorpio realm, we're on a new pathway at a soul level. So right now is a good time to really investigate deeply, again, where we've been, where we're going, what our old motives were, what our new purposes are, and really find those who speak that language or resonate at that same frequency so that we can be more cohesive, right? We're so much stronger together than any one of us is separately. So this is an incredible reading, and again, expect it. Expect that there's going to be a struggle. Expect that there's going to be a fight. Expect that we're going to have to stand up to something that is seemingly more powerful than us. But we have everything we need in order to do so. And but we have to really acknowledge our power and actually put it to use so that we can really stand strong at this point. So let's look at the incredible astrology for today as well, because it is just, and tomorrow too. Wow, so powerful. And yes, it's gonna get weird. I do feel like it's gonna get weird, and maybe even for those of us who have seen it all, or think we've seen it all, or just have had a lot of weirdness in general, it's still gonna get weird, and it's important to realize that too. So let's look at today's astrology. And we'll go to the current transits, and we're going to look at fixed star Zubin Escamali, because that's where the sun is right now, and what that stands for, because this is where it's going to be where it is, and especially in its square to the moon at that first quarter square, right? crisis in action. What are we going to do, right? And it's not a matter of, do we do this or that? It's like these two poles of ourselves are in cross purposes, and we are going to meet, actually it's already happened this morning. So we meet and we have to reconcile that in some way, get something out of it, grow and evolve as a result of that friction and the fact that these two energies are going to meet and just crumple each other because they're fixed water, fixed air. And especially Scorpio and Aquarius, I feel like that this is some of the most powerful square energy, because both of these are very, Scorpio is going into the depths, right? Into the feeling of the depths, the power of our production together and what that can possibly create and what it eventually means. But Aquarius is like that third eye open, right? That you have gnosis of the full picture without being attached to the emotion or immersed in the emotion. So these two to be in square to each other, I think is really more, is for the fact that they're fixed, it actually feels very dynamic. And I think it's just because it's so powerful and resonant that it feels that way. So before we get into astrology, I'm going to check in with the chat real quick. I've had a strong need to declutter and get rid of anything that might be playing a role in distracting me from staying centered. Boy, oh boy, have I been feeling that. And sometimes we can't get rid of those people or those things, and we have to learn how to keep ourselves centered in the face of what will be increasing distractions. I mean, it's just going to be one thunderbolt after the other that's going to come at us. And actually, speaking of that, that's very connected to where the moon meets Jupiter today in Aquarius. So anyway, let's start looking at this astrology for today. It's pretty significant. Okay. First, we'll look at the moon transits, and then I want to talk about some of the larger, because some of them are connected. The moon is going to make connections to certain larger objects and planets that actually have, on their own, have some important references. But let's start with the moon in Aquarius, of course. And the first thing we're going to find is that this morning is that the moon was in a square to the sun, the first quarter square of the sun and moon. So we are plunging ahead into the unknown, and this is where we're really finding our voice, right? This is where our conscious attention really is collectively, the sun, right? This is where we are finding our expression and our passion moving through us, is to pull, drawing the curtains apart and seeing the middle path and going down it, right? This is us going through the Sphinx gateway, right? This is what we're aware of. This is where our ego's expressing itself, finding our voice through this way. Now the square to the moon in Aquarius, right? So this is how we feel, right? This is how we are intuitively navigating the world around us, right? This is our connection to the energetics of it, is much more focused on, well, let me just read the Sabian symbol and then you'll see, because it's very important. The symbol is and we've talked about this yesterday, is a large white dove bearing a message. So what does it really stand for? It is the answer of spiritual agencies, right, to thorough, sustained, and victorious individual efforts. Victorious, right? Then we got that valor and in our reading, right? This is a deep, very deep spiritual blessing. The large dove with the olive branch, right? In the Noah story, for instance, a deep spiritual blessing. And part of this is that we are able to feel into this, that we are able to have a deep intuitive knowing of this. And when we do, there's like a secret prophecy of what is yet to come may be seen by us, maybe, right? Because the idea is that we are plunging ahead into something we can't see, right? The depth of the Scorpio realm is something we don't see. We have to, again, feel it out down in the depths, in the abyss. And we are really gathering our courage in order to do this. But when we can do this, well, not even if we can do this, the cross purpose here is a feeling of being able to see what's coming, because we have in fact continued with this very thorough and sustained effort at an individual level. And the moon does represent each of us in our individual experience going through the entire zodiac every month. So with the water, right, the water within us, the intuitive landscape within us, we can hold that water in this very it's detached, but it's detached in a very compassionate way, and our ability to utilize our intuition to access what's coming, right? And to receive this deep spiritual blessing. So in this moment it's kind of like a test of like, they seem to not really fit, right? That's the square, right? They're at cross purposes. They're meeting each other. But there's something very, as long as we can, there is a sense that we don't have to necessarily do anything with the moon in Aquarius, right? We just have to be in it, and able to access what is yet to come, based on our spiritual sensitivity. And there's some deep spiritual blessing that is coming to us, right? The square is that we're really finding ourselves through the ambition and the movement, right? There is production that is part of Scorpio. So there is an urge to merge with Scorpio. So this is we're finding ourselves, and we're finding our voice and our expression by going, drawing those curtains open and going into this unknown territory. And even though it's like, well, how can I really do that if I'm feeling, where's the motivation to do that if you're feeling this deep sense of peace within yourself and a sense of spiritual blessing and a certification of everything that you've done so far? I would argue that it's in this moment, this crisis of action, that we're really going to figure out how to be in both places at once, right? That we can see what's happening, but we're not going to get there unless we actually take the action to go into the unknown. Does that make sense? Right? And so in that discomfort, we will in fact gain, there's no separating these two, even though they do seem at cross purposes, and one seems very static and kind of outside of time, and the other is very much engaged with the feeling of our the feeling of what we can produce together, what we can create together as a society. You can't separate them, right? And so the crisis here is not what should I do, but they're inseparable, right? You're not going to be able to see what's coming unless you take the initiative to go down the pathway. So this is where we got the most out of this, I think, out of this square. Sorry, guys, let me take a drink. Okay. I hope that makes sense to you. All right, and then what we find here is that after that, the moon comes into a conjunction with Jupiter, right? We just talked about this, and Jupiter now is in a position of Jupiter is in some ways the alchemist, but it's more of like a guru or a lawyer. Jupiter's a great lawyer, or Jupiter is a great pope, or Jupiter is a great advocate, or higher middle management, right? Not the executive board that's actually making the decisions, but the person who manages, right? Because it's all big picture ideas with Jupiter. Jupiter's realm is the higher realm. That is where the responsibility is, not to the details, not to the bottom of the pyramid necessarily. But there is something that is a leadership quality with Jupiter as well, because it's truly the largest planet in our solar system, and is, just a few steps away from having been a star itself, because of how dense and gaseous it is, but it's not. So it has this solidification. It's not solid, it's gas, but you know what I mean. It doesn't create its own light like a star does. And that's the difference. Jupiter doesn't create its own light. Jupiter is the defender and the advocate of that realm, but not in itself able to produce energy. So in Aquarius, as we've talked about, when Jupiter is here, it's not an easy position for Jupiter because there is a singular focus with Aquarius. It's like a laser beam, right? It is the laser beam of gnosis. It's that third eye open and able to handle the full range of energy that moves through the fractal geometry of reality. But with the moon meeting it here, we can have a really clear and strong feeling about how important it is to be able to move past our own passions in the moment and teach very deep wisdom from experience, right? That we've gone, again, there's that fission again. There's the fission. And, Jupiter does rule Sagittarius. So the idea that there's been this splitting apart and the energy released from it and the lightning bolt, right? Jupiter throws thunderbolts, which is carried to him on the back of his eagle, Aquila, which is in the Aquarius constellation, by the way. Or those stars are connected to the Aquarian constellation. Aquila is its own constellation. But on the back of the eagle is the first 0 degrees of Aquarius, actually, is the back of the eagle. And so it's throwing the thunderbolts, but there is something very wise about this position, and we can come into a very personal connection and almost kind of like, oh, I get it now, and feeling the detachment from our own like passions, right, which is kind of hard with all of this Scorpio energy over here, but detaching ourselves enough from the experience of our individual ego expressing itself to be able to teach others, to set an example, to advocate, to represent what it looks like and what it feels like to teach wisdom from direct experience of our past situations. And Jupiter's doing, Jupiter as an advocate or a representative certainly has its own way of doing it, which is taking the energy from above and just kind of, there's the lightning bolt, right? Splitting everything apart. So this is a very direct connection to this. And this is something that's happening later today. So again, just kind of track what's going on for you because it's going to show you quite a bit. And from here, we find that the moon is going to then be in a square, another square with a Scorpio energy. So I'm going to pop over to here real quick so we can look at it at the chart real quick here. Let's see. I want to make sure you can see it. All right. There we go, guys. So this is today as well, and what we're looking at here is Vesta, asteroid Vesta in Scorpio. Now, something to keep in mind here, if you already are paying attention to the full moon lunar eclipse, then you will recognize that Vesta is now in conjunction with where the sun will be at the full moon lunar eclipse, okay? This is about a how do I say this? It's and then we're going to talk about Venus. This is about a spiritually unifying factor that we return to, right? It's the capacity that this is very late Scorpio, okay? This is really important because this is going to be where we find our voice and our expression, what illuminates this eclipse, even though it's not going to be full illumination. We'll still have the sun here. It's our capacity to recognize this integrating principle at the core of everything. We return back to it as a result of all of this investigation that Scorpio really represents. So the presence of a spiritually unifying factor begins to be sensed, especially by the person who is getting fed up with all of the outside bullshit, right? There's all this stuff that's been presented to us or that we have engaged with, and at the end of it all, we actually come back in. So there's an inner allegiance that we are experiencing at this moment with this degree. So Vesta, as the asteroid that represents the goddess Vesta or Hestia, right? The hearth flame, the center of our the community, the center of ourselves, right? The fire, the eternal flame in our soul that if it ever goes out, we're totally in trouble. This is what Vesta represents, and she, her agents are the Vestal Virgins, the priestesses, which is very connected to Virgo. This Virgo, I don't know what it is the strong Virgo, the Virgo people, strong Virgo in your chart, it's got to be all these earth trines to Pluto and Uranus. So other heavy earth, strong earth signs like Capricorn and Taurus too, I think are really getting hit too. Especially Taurus, obviously, but there's something about this Virgo energy that is really challenged. Like Virgos are getting really challenged right now. And Vesta is the goddess of those priestesses that really hold the clear and like pure resonance of what it means to be in Virgo or to be in service. And so there's something about the service to all of us. There's something that is holding the flame or the eternal spark in all of us right now that has to do with this capacity to recognize this core integrating principle. Because when you recognize this, it actually is more cohesive to the community than any one particular, political ideology or social ideology or economic or ideology. I mean, you could just, the isms all day will separate. It's coming back to this integrating principle, and it's going to, like I said, the full moon eclipse is not, there's going to be distortion about what we need to release in order for this to be fully experienced. But in this moment, we can feel how much this is in itself an integrating principle and the core integrating principle for us and our cohesion as a society, and what we can do to be of service to each other through this particular symbol and this position of Vesta. So the moon so there's Vesta here, right? 27 degrees Scorpio. So if we come back over here and we kind of track the moon later today, which is coming into the evening now. We're going late in the evening, very late, depending if you're on the other side of the pond, but certainly just evening time. We're going to find here that the moon is going to come into a square with what that is over here, okay? And this degree is the natal moon of the United States. 27 to 28 degrees Aquarius, okay? So this degree of the moon is about the ability really to use the knowledge and the skill, right? This is a very Aquarian thing, that we have mastered this knowledge, we've mastered our skill, we've mastered our mental efficiency and acuity, using our knowledge and skill in natural surroundings, okay? Aquarius, for all of the futuristic, innovative connections, right, to the future, to an alien perspective, to something outside of the box, right? The revolutionary, for all of the things that seem to force the individuation. It's the highest order of Aquarius is the ability to utilize the natural world, to be in connection to the law, the natural law. So our knowledge and skill used in those surroundings for the satisfaction of vital basic needs, the ability to tap into natural law, the natural surroundings, and utilize our knowledge and skill of these areas to have our needs met. So the moon here in Aquarius, squaring Vesta. Again, there is that fixed square between Scorpio and Aquarius. So there's a sense here that we really need to be able to tap into the energy of the collective in order to really satisfy very basic needs for ourselves emotionally. Whereas Vesta having us, the cohesion of the community is really seated in the feeling itself, like being consumed by the feeling, being immersed in the feeling of this core integrating principle. It doesn't allow for us to actually see what we're going to need for the future. There's two things in this reading today that are directly related to being able to see what is coming and feel what is coming, right? The moon is able to represents our ability to transcend time and space as well, because our intuition and our feeling is where our psychic ability and that deep intuitive channel comes from, which allows for like things like remote viewing, right? We need to be able to do this okay? And the square to all of the Scorpio energy can really have us, I don't want to say distracted, but it can really have us immersed in the feeling of everything, right? The feeling and the intensity of it, the feeling and intensity of the truth coming out, of secrets being revealed, the truth and intensity of what we've created already together. And Mars and Mercury today specifically have now shifted into a degree of Scorpio, which is like, we have to do something about this. We have to utilize all of the productivity of our relationships to each other, or as a society, to actually fix the problems that we've created in the first place, right? That is a big part of the Scorpio archetype. And we do know, right, that our the new moon had us setting intentions, each of us, to grow as an inventor, right? As an inventor in our lab, right? Putting the pieces together. And so we are putting them together, but we're also in our expression, in our conceptualization, and certainly in our action with and the courage that Mars represents in going into these spaces. We really want to do something about it. We want to fix it. And I'm not suggesting that's right or wrong, but what we will find is that both Mars and Mercury today, if we pop back over to this chart one more time, we'll see is asteroid Ceres over here is in a quincunx to both of them, right? At, you know, Mercury has since moved into the 9 to 10 degree position, which means that there will be a sextile to Chiron very soon over here or a quincunx. I'm so sorry, a quincunx to Chiron. That actually did happen today as well. So let's talk about that too, because again, there is as we come into a sense of camaraderie, if we remember what it is that has brought us together in the first place, again, we're going to have to adjust ourselves in the face of like, how do I change? How do I let go of who I've been and step into a new version of myself without like getting pulled back into all of the drama and the trauma of that identity? I mean, will I even be somebody if I let go of my wounded healer identity? And this is very difficult for people to hear. And if you're familiar with Carolyn Myss and her work, Anatomy of the Spirit, Sacred Contracts, right? She pulls no punches about this stuff. And she is almost like so known for calling people out about this dynamic in particular, the wounded healer, and how like we stay addicted to it or we can't actually transcend it. And that's what Chiron in the chart really does represent. So we'll have to adjust ourselves in the moment, because what Mercury is allowing us to discover and be able to conceptualize is what brought us, what holds us together in the first place. Like, what is that commonality and that camaraderie that actually holds us together? It will actually allow us to transmute and step into a new identity. I feel like it's a really important moment. And then also too, you had Mercury and Mars both in a quincunx over here to Ceres, who is still in conjunction with Aldebaran, right? Archangel Michael. And again, we want to fix things. We want to put that energy and action and our mind towards fixing what has been destroyed by our own society, right? Using the same ingenuity to actually fix the very things that the same society has destroyed or damaged really badly. Again, quincunx, right? We have to find squaring the circle. We have to find a way to transmute those things that don't seem to fit together, which is having Ceres be like, it's more about just getting just piercing through our own ego right to the heart of it, right? And Archangel Michael, right? There is no like fixing things. It's just the sword, and it just pierces right into where it needs to go. And with Ceres, we're talking about the actual function of the planet herself, like the seasonal function, the goddess of the grain and agriculture, what sustains us. And I would argue that we really are, it's beyond just agriculture now, and it seems to be much more about our connection to the planetary grid, her own heartbeat, right? Because that is what, the planet is what sustains us. And so again, we as individuals and as acting, with our agency and our minds, we really do want to fix something. And again, we're going to have to transmute ourselves or adjust ourselves in the face of what seems to be like a, if you really want to gather in that which sustains and nourishes us, it's really about getting, piercing through that bullseye of our own mind and all of the information, because we are talking about Gemini, and what, not getting distracted, right? Again, just right to the heart of it. And this is something that we're all dealing with internally right now, because Ceres is retrograde. I do feel like this is much more of a internalized and personalized journey. So when she does Ceres, asteroid Ceres, when it does station direct, which it will, at some point soon, I have it written down somewhere, it will then, that the Earth, I think, will start to really respond to us, right? Right now we're responding to her, and if we plug into her as a planet and as an archetype as well, I think it's going to really allow us. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't want to be driven and use our minds and our intellect to actually fix the problems that we've created. It's really us that has created these problems. But we also have to figure out how to make these two aspects fit, because this is way more about just getting to the bullseye, right? We have everything we need to get to the heart of it at a planetary level. So that's something to consider as well. And then, like I said, we have this Chiron Mercury quincunx as well that's coming through. But I mean, we're going to start being able to see what's coming. I mean, many of us already do, but with the moon in Aquarius, it's really going to allow us to do that. And it's going to really challenge us in terms of the intensity of the feeling of what we are discovering, like what we are investigating and coming to learn about what is underlying everything in our society and our relationships as well. So Venus, she is at a position in Capricorn that literally is, in terms of Sabian symbols, is really about making sure everything is attended to before we cross the threshold. It's meant to safeguard us. And this is what it takes in order to build something significant. And we've seen this card, the intricacies and industry type of card, in the Akashic Tarot before, but this is very much about in our relationships, in our resources, in our body, in our health, right? Venus, in what is pleasing and harmonious to us. What makes us feel safe and secure is a big part of Venus. And part of that is making sure that everything is taken care of before we step through that Sphinx gate. Okay, we have to complete any undertaking before seeking entrance to whatever is found beyond. So no natural process can be accelerated safely beyond certain limits. Certainly, we are trying on some level to do those things, but it defies natural law, and so it's not safe, and it's not going to yield the results that we probably want. So we reach a threshold in which we may have to pause in order to safeguard what we are going forward into. And Venus is going to make that very obvious to us in terms, again, our relationships, all of the aspects of our material life that we value. We want to make sure that we've completed what we need to complete. And so if that's in our health, that's part of it. If it's in our, putting all of our ducks in a row in terms of our resources, that's also part of it. Maybe it's getting all of our family and relationship stuff figured out before we move forward. We don't want loose ends. That's really what it is. So that's also very important in relation today. So incredible. So tomorrow we're going to, like I said, we're going to have this, where are we here? So tomorrow we are going to have this sun come into a trine, right, with Neptune. And this is the first of a number of them. And Vesta already crossed this point. Venus, a long time ago, when she was in Scorpio, crossed this point. And this is a soldier refusing to obey orders. It's a soldier who is obeying their own conscience and refusing orders of an authoritarian rule. I mean, this is a pretty obvious type of symbol here. And when you come into the last decan of Scorpio, which this represents, this is where we start to get weighed down. You can see that Seven of Wands really coming out with this, because it's not going to be just like, you know what? No, I'm not going to do it. And then they'll be like, okay. It's going to be like, no, you're going to do it. And in fact, we're going to beat you back until you comply. And that's been happening for a while, but it's going to reach a whole new level. And the trine to Neptune before Neptune stations direct with all of these, right? With the sun, with Mercury, and even with Mars, is really important to realize that if we've done this work to really get into the experience of trusting what is coming, to feel it, to literally feel it in our field, in our mind's eye, to know what it feels like, to feel what the energy feels like, to look forward to the future, to accept the newness that is coming, and to allow every experience to be brought back to this point, which is very difficult for Neptune. This is going to provide the foundation for success in this realm. And it's going to be difficult, right? Again, we're going to get beat back, and it's already happening, and it's just going to keep happening. But there's something incredibly spiritually powerful about this. I mean, completely foundational with that trine, completely creating a very strong base with that trine, but it requires that I think that we are very clear about what this means in order to get the most from this. We don't have to, and it's a water trine, so it's about the feelings, right? It's about our spirituality and our feelings, and the intuitive and emotional landscape of the water sign. So I think that we're in for some incredible times, and we are in a very important moment before the eclipse that's happening next Friday, that is really going to begin a whole new stage. And I think that's when things are going to get really confusing and distorted, and perhaps we may start feeling more of those notches on our wand as we go through this time. So we will do a lot of astrology tomorrow, so don't you worry about that, my friends. So thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you, and if you need any kind of energetic support, if you want to book a Reiki session, if you want to book a reading, you can do so through Catalyst Energies. That is in the description box below. You can support this work financially by going to Subscribestar and subscribing for $3 a month. And that really supports the work and being able to upgrade production value with those types of things. And, Facebook, Telegram, it's all in the description box. You know the drill. And of course, if you want to get on the mailing list for email so you know what's going on, and you're not on social media, for instance, you can also do that through the website, and that's linked in the description box below. So thank you guys. I love you so much. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate your comments, your feedback, such great expression, such informative and educational dialogue. I really do love, even when it's people disagreeing, right? It's even better in some ways, because that's how we actually learn from each other. It's, you don't really learn anything when you're in an echo chamber of ideas. And so I personally value and don't step away from the disagreements in terms of where we're all at, because we learn so much from each other. So I welcome those as well. As long as your personal attacks are absolutely not tolerated at all, but I haven't really had that problem as of yet. So and the last thing is, just read up on it, because the sun today is in conjunction. We'll go back to right now, is in conjunction with fixed star Zubin Escamali, right? Which is here. It is the north side of the Libra scales, the constellation of Libra. It is the north arm, right, holding the north side of the scale. So I linked it in Telegram. I'll link it in the comments on Facebook for this transmission as well. And you can do some research about this fixed star and what it represents, and how there is a very keen and very sharp psychic connection to this star, and to be plunging ahead into the unknown, and to have all of this connection to the moon in Aquarius, even though it's in a square to it, being able to actually see what's happening, because there is no time and space in Aquarius. There's a really strong opening. I mean, obviously the 1111 portal is a huge gateway, but there's also this ability to really see into what's coming, and how we can best be balanced as in the face of it, basically, because we're, again, all hands on deck, my friends. Star seeds are here for a mission, and so it's been time, but now it's really going to start. The game is going to start stepping up, that is for sure. So I will leave it at that. Thank you so much, my friends. I will see you tomorrow for the astrology. Have a great day. Enjoy it as much as you can, and we'll connect tomorrow. God bless you guys. I'll see you later. Bye.